Spain are the first finalists of Euro 2024 with another extremely impressive performance against a French team that were one of the favourites coming into the competition, but never really got going throughout the Euros and only scored one goal from open play. And in today's video, we're going to be highlighting why Spain have been so dangerous with the ball, and why France struggled to create the same level of consistency in possession. Let's take a look. A great early goal by France's Colomwani was overshadowed by an incredible strike from Lamine Yamal, who is proving to be one of the most dangerous players in world football at only 16 years old. Dani Olmo quickly took advantage of Spain's momentum to put them 2-1 up just a few minutes later. Spain's tactics in possession have been consistent throughout the whole Euros, and nothing really changed in their match against France. Barring a few forced changes because of injuries and disqualifications, Spain kept to their 4-3-3 structure, and the main way they want to move the ball forward is in these pockets of space either side of the opposition's press, so both on the left inside channel and the right inside channel. And they're always able to find space in these pockets because mostly of the position of the fullbacks, who start their attacks in a pretty deep position near the centre-backs, which means that if the opposition wants to press them more aggressively, then you instantly have these channels available. But the opposition does know that this is how they want to progress the ball, so they usually start in a pretty deep position. But in this match, Spain were extremely fluid and completely doubled down on this idea of moving the ball centrally. And they were able to do this because of the excellent rotations of the three midfielders in Fabian Ruiz, Rodri, and Dani Olmo. Because even though Dani Olmo started on the right inside channel, he very frequently moved over into the left inside channel, meaning Fabian Ruiz would often even pick up positions out wide, Cucurella would maybe start in a little bit more of a central position, and even Rodri was not afraid to add more numbers between the lines, more than we've seen in previous matches, and was very comfortable pushing forward and trying to force France to compact the shape over onto this side of the pitch. Now we'll take a look at how France were able to exploit this on a number of different occasions, but there were countless examples of how Spain, once they had the ball in this position, because of these overloads in possession, they were comfortable in maintaining possession and rotating the ball between these players. A lot of the times Dani Olmo would receive the ball and then look for Williams in behind or out wide in a 1v1 against Koundé. A lot of times maybe it was Morata receiving the ball with Olmo in a more central position, Fabian Ruiz and Rodri adding support, and sometimes it was even Cucurella adding more support between the lines, with Fabian Ruiz adopting a slightly more defensive approach and giving Spain a little bit more cover. So another consequence of having this many players over onto the left inside channel is that it frees up a lot of space on the opposite flank, and we did see Spain exploit this countless times, especially in the first half when they were in control of the ball and in control of the match. This is something that they have looked to do in previous matches as well. For example, against Croatia, a pattern they often looked for was a ball forward into Fabian Ruiz, for example, who would then switch the ball himself into Lamine Yamal. But why these switches in possession are so dangerous is because the instant Lamine Yamal, for example, would receive the ball and France would shift over, Navas would enter the picture, and Navas was extremely aggressive and always overlapping on the flank. Now we're going to be looking at how France tried to do a similar thing, but why it didn't quite work. But because there was always the overlap of Navas out wide, maybe looking for crosses at times with Yamal laying it off, sometimes even attacking the half space if Yamal wanted to hug the touchline and attack down the line and maybe dribble a bit more inside. But it meant that for the vast majority of the first half, Theo Hernandez would be in a 2v1 against Navas and Yamal, meaning Rabiot would have to shift over and the whole defense would then slowly move back over, with Spain then having a lot of numbers attacking the back post. And we often saw Yamal attacking more centrally and then looking for a ball onto the back post with a lot of crosses and players ready to attack in the box from this position. And if we look at Yamal's goal, we can see these central overloads and the position of the box-to-box midfielders, with Spain looking to move the ball centrally. And then it's a brilliant individual player from Yamal to get the goal. And in the final third, when Spain are on the full attack, these overlaps from the fullbacks really come into the picture. And it means that Yamal or Williams always have support when they receive the ball. And it left France's defense in two minds, because if they wanted to tighten their shape, there was more space out wide. But if they wanted to cover all these overloads, it meant Spain had more space in the center to drift inside and create more dangerous opportunities. But now we need to talk about France's structure as well, because while they might not have been the most glamorous offensive team at these Euros, defensively speaking, they have been very solid. And while Spain did attempt to create these overloads in possession, the instant France were able to regain the ball, they had a lot of space they could exploit, especially on the opposite flank. So for example, with Spain all tilting onto the left side of the pitch to create these overloads, if France were able to regain the ball, which they were able to do on a number of different occasions because of their excellent defensive midfielders in Kante and Tchouaméni, if they regained the ball, then they had a lot of space on the diagonal on the opposite flank. And there was a great example in the first half with France regaining the ball and quickly switching play, and it's the deep run from Theo Hernandez who gives support to Mbappe and makes it harder for Spain to predict which types of space they need to cover, because you don't know if Hernandez is going to overlap, if he's just adding support on the edge of the box, and it means that Mbappe can truly be in a 1v1 against the fullback. And these counterattacks were the main way that France wanted to create their chances, especially in the first half, but even in the second half when they adopted the more aggressive shape with the introduction of Griezmann and Barcola especially being very dangerous in possession, with Barcola creating a lot of dangerous opportunities by breaking the press himself and then playing Mbappe in behind for him to try and finish the chance in a 1v1, but never really creating that many dangerous opportunities, especially in the second half. But now we also need to consider France's shape from more structured attacks and how they were able to create a really nice goal at the start of the match and why they weren't really able to keep to these patterns consistently throughout the game. So in possession, while France started in a 4-2-3-1, their offensive structure was much more resemblant of a 3-4-3, with Tchouaméni dropping between the centre-backs and the fullbacks adopting a slightly more aggressive position out wide. Now, on paper, this works really well because the combinations of Koundé and Dembele could outnumber Cucurella, and on the left, especially the combinations of Mbappe and Theo Hernandez could be extremely dangerous. And it's exactly from this position where they were able to get their first goal, because by moving the ball out wide, we saw the rotation of Koundé moving forward and Dembele picking up the ball in a deeper position. We also had Rabiot that was over onto this flank to try and create a slight overload, and this meant that Spain had to adopt a slightly more narrow position on the left inside channel. And with Dembele switching the ball into Mbappe, now the position of Theo Hernandez also becomes important because it drags away Spain's press and it means that Mbappe can be in a 1v1. And as Mbappe crosses the ball back across the box, they find themselves 1-0 up with an excellent header by Kolo Muani. And these rotations out wide proved to be very dangerous early on for France, with Dembele, Koundé, Kante and Kolo Muani creating a lot of overloads on their right inside channel for France, meaning that when they switched possession, then they had the position of Hernandez and Mbappe to create a lot of danger. But as the game progressed, these 2v1 combinations became less frequent, and I personally don't think this is down to how Spain changed their pressing shape, but it was down to the position of Koundé, in my opinion, who became a little bit too passive in possession. So while at the start of the match we saw him overlap frequently and create these triangles with Kante, Dembele, Koundé, maybe even Rabiot coming over, the more the game progressed, Koundé stopped making these forward runs consistently, and it often meant that Koundé would be out here on the right trying to receive the ball with little pressure from the opposition, and Dembele was always hugging the touchline, with Kante the only one that would sometimes push forward but would drop deep. But essentially with these three-man rotations coming to a halt, it becomes harder for France to create overloads, because if Koundé is always in this position, Dembele can't really push into the center, because then Cucurella will just adopt a slightly narrower position and there's no one giving width to France's attacks. So this meant that Dembele always had to hug the touchline, and because Koundé was in this position, you ended up with a lot of French players at the back in this position out here, making it difficult for them to outnumber Spain's defense. And there's a lot of examples of when France moved the ball out wide onto the right flank into Dembele. At the start, he did have support from Koundé and created a little bit of disruption in Spain's defense. But as the game progressed, Dembele was completely isolated on the right flank, with Koundé being a little bit too slow to add support, meaning that if Dembele wanted to create a chance, he had to dribble inside himself, often trying to cross the ball unsuccessfully, or dribble down the line and wasn't really able to create a lot of danger. But if the ball went back to Koundé, he was quite far away, so France really couldn't cross the ball immediately, and if they did, it was easily predictable from the Spanish defense. And I feel like we need to create a quick comparison with how Spain created these same 2v1s out wide. And if you look at when Yamal receives the ball out wide on the right flank for Spain, Navas is always ready to overlap on the right flank. With Dembele, on the other hand, when he receives the ball, there isn't always an immediate option open to him, and it makes it harder for France to create consistent attacks. Now, on the left channel for France, it was a little bit more fluid for their attacks, because if Mbappe had the ball, Hernandez would be in this position. He would overlap a little bit more consistently compared to Koundé, but his position as support meant that Mbappe had the 1v1 against Navas that he could exploit, but if there wasn't space, he could lay the ball off into Hernandez, who could try and cross the ball into the box from a slightly deeper position. And while there weren't too many positional rotations, this combination did work quite well for them at times, creating a few dangerous balls into the box. But it all comes down to the fact that Spain were able to create a lot more positional rotations in their attacks. But while France were able to create a number of different chances, they weren't as fluid in their positioning, and it was a little bit harder for them to create dangerous opportunities. But now let me know what you thought of this match and which players stood out to you in this semi-final.